Morning, guys. We're going to pick back up with Fahrenheit 451. It's going to be on page 107 for you guys. So go ahead and get to that. We're going to start part 3 today, which is the last part of this book. And this book in particular has taken a sharp turn from where it started. How many of you were surprised by the way part 2 ended? That surprise definitely affected our protagonist, Montag. As he was making his way to the next call, he's sitting there thinking how he doesn't think he can keep doing it anymore. He doesn't think he can go on being a firefighter. And when all of a sudden the fire truck pulls up to Montag's house. So, if you remember how things were going at the end of part 2, Montag was feeling like he couldn't do it anymore. He's got Faber now, kind of as a partner willing to help him. They have a possible plan to kind of, almost set kind of a conspiracy theory started with the firemen, get them kind of turning on each other. He's done with it. He's done with the job. He's blown up at Mildred's friends. Things are taking a turn, and sure enough, Beatty surprises him by pulling up to the house. So part 3 is called Burning Bright. And that could mean a lot of different things based on where we left off, but we'll have to see. So on page 107, let's get us started. Lights flicked on and house doors opened all down the street to watch the carnival set up. Montag and Beatty stared, one with dry satisfaction, the other with disbelief, at the house before them, this main ring in which torches would be juggled and fire eaten. It's an interesting metaphor for what the firemen do in this society. It's like a carnival or a circus. There's fire eaters and it's a big show for everybody to come out and see. Come take a look at the next house that's going to be set on fire. Well, said Beatty, now you did it. Old Montag wanted to fly near the sun, and now he's burnt his damn wings. He wonders why. Didn't I hint enough when I sent the hound around your place? Montag's face was entirely numb and featureless. He felt his head turn like a stone carving to the dark place next door, set in its bright border of flowers. Beatty snorted. Oh, no? You weren't fooled by that little idiot's routine, were you? Flowers and butterflies and leaves and sunsets. Oh, hell. It's all in her file. I'll be damned. I've hit the bullseye. Look at the sick look on your face. A few grass blades and the quarters of the moon. What trash. What good did she ever do with all that? Montag sat on the cold fender of the Dragon, moving his head half an inch to the left, half an inch to the right, left, right, left, right. She saw everything. She didn't do anything to anyone. She just let them alone. Alone, hell! She chewed around you, didn't she? One of these damn do-gooders with their shocked holier-than-thou silences, their one talent in making others feel guilty. God damn you! They rise like the midnight sun to sweat you in your bed. The front door opened. Mildred came down the steps running, one suitcase held with a dreamlike clenching rigidity in her fist as a beetle taxi hissed to the curb. Mildred! She ran past with her body stiff, her face floured with powder, her mouth gone without lipstick. Mildred, you didn't put in the alarm. She shoved the valise in the waiting beetle, climbed in, and sat mumbling. Poor family. Poor family. Oh, everything gone. Everything gone now. So you can see now that the problem has come to her house. It's not Montag she's concerned about. It's the parlor walls that she's most worried about. Beatty grabbed Montag's shoulder as the beetle blasted away and hit 70 miles an hour far down the street, gone. There was a crash, like the falling parts of a dream fashioned out of a warped glass, mirrors, and crystal prisms. Montag drifted about as if still another incomprehensible storm had turned him, to see stonemen in black wielding axes, shattering window panes to provide cross ventilation. The brush of a death-head moth against a cold black screen. Montag, this is Faber. Do you hear me? What's happening? This is happening to me, said Montag. What a dreadful surprise, said Beatty. For everyone nowadays knows absolutely is certain that nothing will ever happen to me. Others die, I go on. There are no consequences, no responsibilities, except that there are. But let's not talk about them, eh? By the time the consequences catch up with you, it's too late, isn't it, Montag? Montag, can you get away and run? Asked Faber. Montag walked, but did not feel his feet touch the cement and then the night grasses. Beatty flicked his igniter nearby, and a small orange flame drew his fascinated gaze. What is there about fire that's so lovely? No matter what age we are, what draws us to it? Beatty blew out the flame and lit it again. It's perpetual motion. The thing man wanted to invent but never did. Or almost perpetual motion. If you let it go on, it burn our lifetimes out. What is fire? It's a mystery. Scientists give us gobbledygook about friction and molecules, but they don't really know. Its real beauty is that it destroys responsibility and consequences. A problem gets too burdensome, then into the furnace with it. Now, Montag, you're a burden, and fire will lift you off my shoulders. Clean, quick, sure. Nothing to rot later. Antibiotic, aesthetic, practical. Montag stood looking in now at this queer house, made strange by the hour of the night, by murmuring neighbor voices, by littered glass, and there on the floor their covers torn off and spilled out like swan feathers, the incredible books that looked so silly and really not worth bothering with, for these were nothing but black type and yellowed paper and raveled binding. So I think that's a really interesting point here, is that as he's looking around, it's dawning on him as this is happening to him, as the firemen are starting to put in work on his house. He's looking at it, and he's looking at these books, again, being compared to birds with their wings ripped off. These books on the ground, like, is it really worth doing all this for books? Like, having this kind of production for books? Like, why? Why do they have to go through all this hassle for books? What is it? What's the reason? It's like starting to kind of spin the gears in his mind a little bit. Mildred. Of course. She must have watched him hide the books in the garden and brought them back in. Mildred. I want you to do this job all by your lonesome, Montag. Not with kerosene and a match, but piecework with a flamethrower. Your house, your cleanup. Montag, can't you run and get away? No, cried Montag helplessly. The hound. Because of the hound. Faber heard, and Beatty, thinking it was meant for him, heard. Yeah, the hound's somewhere about the neighborhood, so don't try anything. You ready? Ready. Montag snapped the safety catch on the flamethrower. Fire! A great nuzzling gout of fire leapt out to lap at the books and knock them against the wall. He stepped into the bedroom and fired twice, and the twin beds went up in a great simmering whisper, with more heat and passion and light than he would have supposed them to contain. Ooh, that's kind of a shot at the marriage a little bit, isn't it? He burnt the bedroom walls and the cosmetics chest because he wanted to change everything. The chairs, the tables, and in the dining room, the silverware and plastic dishes. Everything that showed that he had lived here in this empty house with a strange woman who would forget him by tomorrow. who had gone and quite forgotten him already, listening to her seashell radio pour in on her and in on her as she rode across town alone. And as before, it was good to burn. He felt himself gush out in the fire, snatch, rend, rip in half with flame, and put away the senseless problem. If there was no solution, well, then now there was no problem either. Fire was best for everything. The books, Montag. The books leapt and danced like roasted birds, their wings ablaze with red and yellow feathers. And then he came to the parlor where the great idiot monsters lay asleep with their white thoughts and their snowy dreams, and he shot a bolt at each of the 3 blank walls, and the vacuum hissed out at him. The emptiness made an even emptier whistle, a senseless scream. He tried to think about the vacuum upon which nothingness had performed, but he could not. He held his breath so the vacuum could not get into his lungs. He cut off its terrible emptiness. He drew back and gave the entire room a gift of one huge bright yellow flower of burning. The fireproof plastic sheath on everything was cut wide, and the house began to shudder with flame. "When you're quite finished," said Beatty behind him, "you're under arrest." The house fell in red coals and black ash. It bedded itself down in sleepy pink-gray cinders, and a smoke plume blew over it, rising and waving slowly back and forth in the sky. It was 3:30 in the morning. The crowd drew back into their houses. The great tents of the circus had slumped into charcoal and rubble, and the show was well over. Montag stood with the flamethrower in his limp hands, great islands of perspiration drenching his armpits, his face smeared with soot. The other firemen waited behind him in the darkness, their faces illumined faintly with the smoldering foundation. Montag started to speak twice, and then finally managed to put his thought together. "Was it my wife that turned in the alarm?" Beatty nodded. "But her friends turned in an alarm earlier that I let ride. One way or another, you'd have got it. It was pretty silly, quoting poetry around free and easy like that. It was the act of a damn silly snob. Give a man a few lines of verse and he thinks he's the lord of all creation. You think you can walk on water with your books? Well, the world can get by just fine without 'em. Look where they got you, in slime up to your lip. If I stir the slime with my little finger, you'll drown." Montag could not move. A great earthquake had come with fire and leveled the house, and Mildred was under there somewhere, and his entire life under there, and he could not move. The earthquake was still shaking and falling and shivering inside him, and he stood there, his knees half bent under the great load of tiredness and bewilderment and outrage, letting Beatty hit him without raising a hand. So, just one thing to point out here. Beatty does something pretty unique here in letting Montag burn his own house, kind of like as a punishment, as like, this is your mess, you're going to clean it up, is the way he puts it. But you can tell that Montag is actually doing kind of like what the firemen do, is when anything comes up as a problem, you burn it, you get rid of it, you erase it from your life. And he's supposed to be burning books, but Montag's really going far in like burning everything. He's just like burning the parlor walls, he's just like lighting up all Mildred's stuff, burns their beds. And that's more passion and heat than that room has seen in a long time. And Beatty has to remind him like, "Hey buddy, we're here for the books. Can you focus on what we're here for?" But you could tell that Montag's kind of like releasing this, like, perhaps maybe he's wanted to do this for a long time. Like his life now is so different than what it was at the very beginning of this book. Things have definitely changed for Montag. So he's done. It's all over, and he's going to be under arrest. "Montag, you idiot. Montag, you damn fool. Why did you really do it?" Montag did not hear. He was far away. He was running with his mind. He was gone, leaving this dead, soot-covered body to sway in front of another raving fool. Montag, get out of there, said Faber. Montag listened. Beatty struck him a blow on the head that sent him reeling back. The green bullet, in which Faber's voice whispered and cried, fell to the sidewalk. Beatty snatched it up, grinning. He held it in, half out of his ear. Montag heard the distant voice calling, "Montag, you all right?" Beatty switched the green bullet off and thrust it in his pocket. "Well, so there's more here than I thought. I saw you tilt your head listening. First I thought you had a seashell. When you turned clever later, I wondered. We'll trace this and drop it in on your friend." "No," said Montag. He twitched the safety catch on the flamethrower. Beatty glanced instantly at Montag's fingers, and his eyes widened the faintest bit. Montag saw the surprise there, and himself glanced to his hands to see what new thing they had done. There's his hands again, personified throughout this entire book, with a mind of their own, doing things, and him just kind of like, "Oh, what are the hands up to? Oh, what's the hands got now? A flamethrower." Thinking back later, he could never decide whether the hands or Beatty's reaction to the hands gave him the final push toward murder. The last rolling thunder of the avalanche stoned down about his ears, not touching him. Beatty grinned his most charming grin. "Well, that's one way to get an audience. Hold a gun on a man and force him to listen to your speech. Well, speech away. What'll it be this time? Why don't you belt Shakespeare at me, you fumbling snob? There's no terror, Cassius, in your threats, for I am armed so strong in honesty that they pass me as an idle wind, which I respect not. How's that? Go ahead now, you second-hand literature. Pull the trigger." He took one step toward Montag. Montag only said, "We never burned right." "Hand it over, Guy," said Beatty with a fixed smile. And then he was a shrieking blaze. A jumping, sprawling, gibbering mannequin, no longer human or known, all writhing flame on the lawn as Montag shot one continuous pulse of liquid fire on him. There was a hiss, like a great mouthful of spittle banging a red-hot stove, bubbling and frothing as if salt had been poured over a monstrous black snail to cause a terrible liquefaction and boiling over of yellow foam. Montag shut his eyes, shouted, and fought to get his hands at his ears to clamp and to cut away the sound. Beatty flopped over and over and over, and at last twisted in on himself like a charred wax doll, and laid silent. The other two firemen did not move. So, one of the things that's great about Ray Bradbury, hopefully you've noticed with this book, is that he is so incredible with his imagery and all of the figurative language he uses here. Just look at the way that Beatty's described as Montag is murdering him with this flamethrower. He's describing the sounds that are being made, like a hiss of a great mouthful of spittle banging against a red-hot stove, the hissing sound that makes, a bubbling and frothing, as if salt had been poured on a black snail, and it's writhing and it's liquefying, and his body's turning in on itself. It's not even like human anymore. Just very descriptive and really pretty gross. Montag kept his sickness down long enough to aim the flamethrower. "Turn around." They turned. Their faces blanched meat, streaming sweat. He beat their heads, knocking off their helmets and bringing them down on themselves. They fell and lay without moving. The single blowing of a single autumn leaf. He turned, and the mechanical hound was there. It was half across the lawn, coming from the shadows, moving with such drifting ease that it was like a single solid cloud of black-gray smoke blown at him in silence. It made a single last leap, into the air, coming down at Montag from a good 3 feet over his head. Its spider legs reaching, the procaine needle snapping out of its single angry tooth. Montag caught it with a bloom of fire, a single wondrous blossom that curled in petals of yellow and blue and orange about the metal dog, clad it in a new covering as it slammed into Montag and threw him 10 feet back against the bole of a tree, taking the flame gun with him. He felt it scrabble and seize his leg and stab the needle in for a moment before the fire snapped the hound up in the air and burst its metal bones at the joints and blew out its interior in a single flushing of red color, like a skyrocket fastened to the street. Montag lay watching the dead alive thing fiddle the air and die. Even now, it seemed to want to get back at him and finish the injection, which was now working through the flesh of his leg. He felt all of the mingled relief and horror at having pulled back only in time to have just his knee slammed by the fender of a car hurtling by at 90 miles an hour. He was afraid to get up, afraid he might not be able to gain his feet at all with an anesthetized leg, a numbness in a numbness hollowed into a numbness. And now, well, the street was empty. The house burnt like an ancient bit of stage scenery. The other homes dark. The hound here, and Beatty there. The other 2 firemen, another place. And the salamander. He gazed at the immense engine. Well, that would have to go too. Well, he thought, let's see how badly off you are. On your feet now. Easy, easy. There. So, Montag, there's a lot happens here in that moment. After he sets Beatty on fire, he knocks down Stoneman and Black, his colleagues, and he turns around to see the hound. The hound is jumping after him, and as he shoots him with that flamethrower, that hound just gets enough of him to hit him with that needle, which has been described as like a procaine needle. Imagine kind of like what you get at the dentist, only magnified, right, to numb your body. And that's what it typically does. It numbs people. So this is where it's really kind of a dangerous piece of technology. It numbs people so that they are completely taken out of commission here, and then the police or whoever can kind of step in and take them and do away with the people who are hiding these books. So Montag's actually been stabbed with the needle, and it's starting to kind of work its way up from his leg. And at the same time, a car comes hurtling by down the street, and he gets hit by a car. So there's so much action going on. In the meantime, now he's a fugitive. So he's going to have to get the hell out of there. He stood, and he had only one leg. The other was like a chunk of burnt pine log he was carrying along as a penance for some obscure sin. When he put his weight on it, a shower of silver needles gushed up the length of the calf and went off in the knee. He wept. Come on. You can't just stay here. A few house lights were going on again down the street, whether from the incidents just past or because of the abnormal silence following the fight. Montag did not know. He hobbled around the ruins, seizing at his bad leg when it lagged, talking and whimpering and shouting directions at it and cursing it and pleading with it to work for him now when it was vital. He heard a number of people crying out in the darkness and shouting. He reached the backyard and the alley. Beatty, he thought, you're not a problem now. You always said, don't face a problem, burn it. Well, now I've done both. Goodbye, Captain. And he stumbled along the alley in the dark. A shotgun blast went off in his leg every time he put it down, and he thought, you're a fool, a damn fool, an awful fool, an idiot, an awful idiot, a damn idiot and a fool, a damn fool. Look at the mess. And where's the mop? Look at the mess, and what do? Pride, damn it, and temper. And you've junked it all. At the very start, you vomit on everyone and yourself. But everything at once, and everything one on top of another. Beatty, the women, Mildred, Clarice, everything. No excuse. No excuse. A fool. A damn fool. Go give yourself up. No. Save what we can. We'll do what there is left to do. If we have to burn, let's take a few more with us. Here. He remembered the books and turned back, just on the off chance. He found a few books where he had left them, near the garden fence. Mildred, God bless her, had missed a few. 4 books still lay hidden where he had put them. Voices were wailing in the night, and flash beams swirled about. Other salamanders were roaring, their engines far away, and police sirens were cutting their way across the town with their sirens. Montag took the 4 remaining books and hopped his way down the alley, and suddenly fell, as if his head had been cut off and only his body lay there. Something inside had jerked him to a halt and flopped him down. He lay where he had fallen and sobbed, his legs folded, his face pressed blindly to the gravel. Beatty wanted to die. In the middle of the crying, Montag knew it for the truth. Beatty had wanted to die. He had just stood there, not really trying to save himself. He just stood there joking, needling, thought Montag. And the thought was enough to stifle his sobbing and let him pause for air. How strange. Strange. To want to die so much that you let a man walk around armed, and then, instead of shutting up and staying alive, you go on yelling at people and making fun of them until you get them mad, and then... So this is an interesting revelation that he comes to here, too. He starts to put the pieces together that Beatty puts the flamethrower in his hands. Like, what other explanation could there be? If you look at the way Beatty behaves here, it's almost as if he wanted to die. He was provoking him, which is really kind of an odd thing for him to do. And then we have to ask ourselves, well, why? Why would Beatty do that? Why would Beatty be suicidal? And we've talked a little bit throughout this book at how people in the society don't seem to really value their life. They live dangerously. They fight. They hurt each other. There's a lot of talk of suicide. Mildred with her sleeping pills. Mrs. Phelps with her different husbands who have jumped off buildings or blown their brains out. All kinds of things are referenced in here that there's just not a lot of value placed on life. And that, again, points to the idea that people aren't happy. Well, Beatty isn't. He's not immune to that either. Perhaps he was unhappy as well. Why else would he do what he did to Montag? It's kind of interesting. At a distance, running feet. Montag sat up. Let's get out of here. Come on, get up, get up. You can't just sit. But he was still crying, and that had to be finished. It was going away now. He hadn't wanted to kill anyone, not even Beatty. His flesh gripped him and shrank as if it had been plunged in acid. He gagged. He saw Beatty, a torch not moving, fluttering out in the grass. He bit at his knuckles. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, God, I'm sorry. He tried to piece it all together. To go back to the normal pattern of life a few short days ago before the sieve and the sand. Denims, dentifrice, moth voices, fireflies, the alarms and excursions. Too much for a few short days. Too much indeed for a lifetime. Feet ran in the far end of the alley. Get up, he told himself. Damn it, get up. He said to the leg and stood. The pains were spikes driven in the kneecap, and then only darning needles, and then only common ordinary safety pins, and after he had shagged along 50 more hops and jumps, filling his hand with slivers from the board fence, the prickling was like someone blowing a spray of scalding water on that leg. And the leg was at last his own leg again. He'd been afraid that running might break the loose ankle. Now, sucking all the night into his open mouth and blowing it out pale, with all the blackness left heavily inside himself, he set out in a steady jogging pace. He carried the books in his hands. He thought of Faber. Faber was back there in that steaming lump of tar that had no name or identity now. It's kind of a harsh way to consider Beatty, but the truth. He had burnt Faber, too. He suddenly felt so shocked by this that he felt Faber was really dead, baked like a roach in that small green capsule, shoved and lost in the pocket of a man who was now nothing but a framed skeleton strung with asphalt tendons. You must remember, burn them or they'll burn you, he thought. Right now it's as simple as that. He searched his pockets. The money was there. And in his other pocket he found the usual seashell upon which the city was talking to itself in the cold black morning. Police alert! Wanted! Fugitive in city! Has committed murder and crimes against the state. Name, Guy Montag. Occupation, fireman. Last seen? He ran steadily for 6 blocks in the alley, and then the alley opened out onto a wide empty thoroughfare, 10 lanes wide. It seemed like a boatless river frozen there in the raw light of the high white arc lamps. You could drown trying to cross it, he felt. It was too wide. It was too open. It was a vast stage without scenery, inviting him to run across, easily seen in the blazing illumination, easily caught, easily shot down. The seashell hummed in his ear. Watch for the running man! Watch for the running man! Watch for the man running! Watch for a man alone, on foot! Watch! Montag pulled back in the shadows. Directly ahead lay a gas station, a great chunk of porcelain snow shining there, and 2 silver beetles pulling in to fill up. Now he must be clean and presentable if he wished to walk, not run, stroll calmly across that wide boulevard. It would give him an extra margin of safety if he washed up and combed his hair before he went on his way to get where? Yes, he thought, where am I running? Nowhere. There was nowhere to go. No friend to turn to, really, except Faber. And then he realized that he was indeed running toward Faber's house instinctively. But Faber couldn't hide him. Be suicide even to try. But he knew that he would go to see Faber anyway, for a few short minutes. Faber's would be the place where he might refuel his fast-draining belief in his own ability to survive. He just wanted to know that there was a man like Faber in the world. He wanted to see the man alive and not burnt back there like a body shelled in another body. And some of the money must be left with Faber, of course, be spent after Montag ran on his way. Perhaps he could make the open country and live on near the rivers or near the highways and the fields and hills. A great whirling whisper made him look to the sky. The police helicopters were rising so far away that it seemed someone had blown the gray head off a dry dandelion flower. 24 of them flurried, wavering, indecisive, 3 miles off like butterflies, puzzled by autumn. And then they were plummeting down to land, one by one, here, there, softly meeting the streets where, turned back to beetles, they shrieked along the boulevards or, as suddenly, leapt back into the air, continuing their search. That's a good place to stop for right now. A lot of drama going on there for Montag. He is on the run. And now, an interesting piece of technology in this society. We've got these helicopters that are half helicopter, half cars. They can go up and down. They go up into the sky, look around, and they need to. They drop down to the ground on wheels and scoot down the roads chasing after somebody who's on the run. Where's Montag going to go? So, a lot happened there at the very beginning of part 3. But you could tell Beatty, it was either him, like Montag says, it's like you either burn them or they burn you. And so he didn't want to have to kill anybody, but he could quickly tell that that was the only way out of the situation he was in. And now he's full out on the run. And it's crazy to think, too, of all people, who sounded the alarm on Montag? His own wife. His own wife sounded the alarm. I mean, his neighbors had done it too. You know, he had really pissed off the ladies. But Regardless, his own wife, where's the loyalty, Mildred? His own wife had forsaken her own parlor walls to call an alarm on her own husband. So it's kind of a tough situation. Anyhow, that's where we're going to stop for today. Tomorrow we'll pick back up and see what Montag is going to do now that he's a fugitive running from the law. Can't wait to see. All right, you guys have a good day.